हेलो फ्रेंड्स, केजी क्लासेस में आपका स्वागत है। आज हम आपको आफ्टर वर्ड्स बाय थॉमस हार्डी 1840 टू 1928 के एक्सप्लेनेशन के बारे में बताएंगे। व्हेन द प्रेजेंट से लेके सच थिंग्स रेफरेंस दीज लाइन्स हैव बीन टेकन फ्रॉम द हार्डीज पोएम आफ्टर वर्ड्स। कॉन्टेक्स्ट: दिस पोएम was composed by Hardy in his old age. Like an old man, he also thinks about his death, which is the fact of life. Hardy has been a keen observer of the beauty and mystery of nature. In this poem, he thinks that after his death, people will remember him as a lover of nature. Explanation: the poet says that the time of his death has come very near and his trembling life is going to end. In his life, he always enjoyed green leaves in spring season. In the month of spring, these green leaves look in joy and they seem to dance. The new fresh leaf becomes very delicate and a natural picture can be seen on it. The poet says that when the people will see this beautiful scene, they will remember him. They will think that Hardy was the man who used to see these things in nature. Next है, if it be in से लेकर familiar sight. Explanation: Hardy says that he has been a great lover of nature. In the evening, he used to see many beautiful scenes. At this time, the very much when he used to come to a bush in the evening, he used to see hawks falling very quickly on the thorns. He says that after his death, when the people will see these beautiful scenes, they will remember him. They will say that Hardy was the man who was familiar with such type of scene. नेक्स्ट है, इफ़ आई पास से लेके नाउ ही इज गॉन. एक्सप्लेनेशन: द पोएट कमेंट्स दैट आफ्टर हिज डेथ ही विल बी remembered as a lover of nature. In his lifetime, he used to walk in the darkness of night. He used to enjoy the warm air and the atmosphere was full of moths. He liked this atmosphere very much. He also used to see the wild rat going secretly on the earth. He loved these innocent creatures very much. The poet says that after his death, when the people will see such type of atmosphere, they will remember him. They will think that Hardy never tried to harm the innocent creatures, though he could do very little for these innocent creatures. He loved them very much. The poet says that after his death, people will remember him because of these reasons. Next है, if when से लेके such mysteries. Explanation: the poet states that in his life he was a great lover of nature. After his death, people will regard him as a great lover of nature. He used to see the starry sky in the winter season. So when the people will see starry sky in the winter season, they will remember him. They will think that Hardy was the man who wanted to know the mysteries of nature and human life. Next, and will any से लेकर such things तक. Explanation: Hardy comments that after his death he should be remembered as a great lover of nature. In his lifetime, he used to hear the church bell that is rung at the time of death of someone. At that time, he also enjoyed that wind which used to flow there. Hardy says that on his death, the people will ring the church bell and some people will hear it. At that time, the people will think that Hardy was the man who used to hear the church bell and now he is no more. Common notes. This poem has been regarded as a subjective poem. Second, in this poem, Hardy presents himself as a lover of nature. Third, the poem is also remarkable because in it the poet uses very appealing language. Long answer type question. Question first. Write a note on critical appreciation of the poem The Darkling Thresh. Introduction. The Darkling Thresh is a famous poem of Thomas Hardy, was first published in the last days of 1900 under the title By the Century Death Bad. This poem is one of the finest lyrics of Thomas Hardy. It is a sort of elegy over the dying century. The entire atmosphere of the poem is gloomy and dreary. It is only at the end of the poem that the poet presents a note of hope. This beautiful poem also reveals Hardy's deep love for nature, though he knew that nature was always indifferent to the sorrows of mankind. Hardy himself recognized that this poem is highly emotional and it is a beautiful nature poem composed by him. The poet points out, I leaned upon a coppice gate when frost was sceptre grey and winter's drag made desolate the beacning eye of the day. Heading the theme. The theme of this poem is very outstanding because the poet describes the gloomy atmosphere from the beginning to the end. After this, he presents an old beak thrush which has a dream of hope. So the theme of the poem is that man should not give up the power of hope at any cost. Though Hardy was a pessimistic writer, the end of the poem is certainly optimistic. The theme of this poem can be noted in the last two lines of the poem. Some blessed hopes whereof he knew and I was unaware. A pessimistic atmosphere. Heading है the poem The Darkling Thresh is very remarkable because of the pessimistic atmosphere which the poet describes from the beginning to the end. The poet presents troublesome evening of the hard winter season. The atmosphere in the bitter winter season becomes as grey as the ghost. It looks to the poet like the dead body of the past time. Even the thresh, which is presented as the symbol of hope, has been described as an aged thrush, fierce, frail, gaunt and small. The poet points out that the atmosphere of his mind had also become gloomy because of gloomy atmosphere. In the following lines, the poet describes it. The land's sharp features seemed to be the century carves out leaned his gripped the cloudy canopy. Heading a philosophic poem. The Darkling Thresh, like many other poems of Hardy, is also a philosophical poem. The basic philosophy of the poet is that even in the complete darkness, man should try to seek the light. Even in the most troublesome atmosphere, man should be hopeful. This philosophy finds the best expression in this poem. About the thrush, the poet says that he had chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. Adding a nature poem. The Darkling Thresh has been taken as a nature poem of Thomas Hardy. From the beginning to the end, the poet describes a natural scene which belongs to the winter season. He points out how in winter season the nature becomes troublesome for the common people. Each and everything is affected by winter. Not only this, but the poet also describes the cruel attitude of nature towards human beings. Hardy is of the opinion in many of his poems that nature is always indifferent to the sorrows of mankind. This fact can be noted in this poem also. In the following lines it can be seen, and every spirit upon earth seemed favorless as I. Heading a poetic style. The poetic style of this poem is also very outstanding. The poet uses simple and impressive words in it. He also presents figures of speech in order to express his ideas. In this beautiful short poem, the poet has made a beautiful use of poetic imagery. In the presentation of the landscape, the colors of the poet are not bright but they are dim, dark and gloomy. A critic comments, and all mankind that haunted me had sought their household fires. Heading a conclusion. The Darkling Thresh is certainly one of the best poems of Hardy. The poet describes his pessimism in this poem. The theme of this poem is very interesting and it reveals the Victorian melancholy. The poet has used wonderful poetic imagery. The attitude of the poet in this poem towards nature is very interesting. In short, this poem can be taken as one of the greatest contributions of Hardy to the development of English poetry. A critic comments his happy good night air, some blessed hope whereof he knew, and I was unaware. Thanks, best of luck.